Okay. And I could shut my voice, my mute button. I just want to say hello to everyone. Everyone is coming in. I'm not sure if you have to admit more people in, Alissa. Was that
Yep, I'm admitting them.
okay? Perfect. Very good. We have approximately, Michelle, we have 52 attendees.
Wow.
Tony, we just had a few more pop in, so it's closer to 60 now.
Okay. All right. Well, we're happy to have that. All right. Okay. People are. You, Alyssa. Okay.
Becky.
It's a beautiful day here today. My goodness, it's gorgeous.
It's a perfect day for golfing.
Mm-hmm. But we had a perfect day for golfing.
Yes, we did.
It was a really great event.
And all people on the call should join us next year.
Let's hope. That would be it's a good start. And hopefully no COVID.
Oh.
Okay. People are. Welcome everyone. Has an interesting program.
Anytime there's a hacker on any kind of program, it's interesting. You know, not to shine my own spotlight or anything.
Okay, someone else is coming in.
Hey, Tony, do you want to give everyone until 9:10? How long do you want to give everyone?
I would say it's 12:03, maybe 12:06. What do we say? 3 more minutes? Is that good? Because right now we only have 1/3 of the attendees.
Okay.
Another 2 minutes.
I would say 12:06, then you could start the welcoming, Michelle. I love the little sound, you know?
Yeah, I'm playing with the options in Zoom.
All right.
Let's see, what do we have? Alyssa, we have 1/3, 22 just registered, entered.
I think we should probably go ahead and get started.
Yeah, because it's presentation is 30 minutes. Well, Alyssa, you
Oh, I
would
think.
admit them, okay?
All right. So,
Yeah, I can just admit people as they
I will.
come in.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Our president can get started. I will mute myself. Thank you.
That'd be great. All right. And Tony for organizing this event. I think we've had learning more about these financial services. First, a little housekeeping. We will mute everyone. If not, if you could, everyone could mute yourself. There will be a question and answer session at the end, and you can raise your questions through the raise your hand through the during the presentation. We will be recording the presentation, and it will be available to any of you who want to revisit and share it further. So today, Seth Rao, a member of the Luxembourg Chamber, is going to interview Alissa Knight, and we will learn more about her experience. But first, a few words on Seth, who is founder and CTO of SecReliant, and a software company that manages and responds to today's environment and in today's financial, and he manages security engagement for clients that include also the Luxembourg Chamber, I have to admit, and the Luxembourg House, and multiple other government agencies. So he's going to be interviewing Alissa Knight, who was recognized as a high functioning and a successful hacker, whatever that means. But I think the interesting thing is that she moved from the hacking world to selling her services to today's financial institutions and help us or help them make the world a little more secure. In 2019, she was known for downloading, as I read here, 30 financial services mobile apps and hacking all of them in less than 8 minutes. That's a performance, and we look forward to hearing more about Alissa's experience. And thank you, Alissa and Seth, for the presentation, and thank you to all of our guests who are joining today's presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle. I'd like to also thank the fabulous team at LACC, and with Today, we're going to be interviewing Alissa Knight. Alissa, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. How's everyone doing? Good morning. So I'm a recovering hacker of 20 years. I started hacking when I was 13. Typical government, typical Hollywood story. Hacked into a government network, got caught, got off on a technicality, and then went to work for the U.S. Intelligence Community and Cyber Warfare. My focus historically has always been hacking embedded systems, and recently published a new book on hacking connected cars that began shipping this year. And I've got a new book contract with Wiley for hacking APIs. Now, obviously, hacking embedded systems leads me to hacking APIs because most IoT devices, connected cars, mobile apps, they all communicate with APIs. So it was a natural segue for me. That's it. I don't have really much more to say. So I've been doing this for a while. So
Do you want to start rolling the video so we can see the interview?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, everyone. So as with the typical format with this, we pre-recorded the interview, but definitely stick around because we are unveiling my new research into hacking healthcare APIs. So you'll see me refer to the concept of telemedicine apps. And one thing that Seth and I didn't talk about in the interview was what a telemedicine app is. This is sort of a new, I guess, a fundamental shift that's occurring in healthcare, where in this post-COVID economy, a lot of people are visiting their doctors, seeing their doctors, seeing their mental health professionals remotely over an app. And it's you've probably heard it referred to as telehealth and telemedicine, so they're interchangeable. So I'm going to talk about that new research as well as unveil a new theatrical trailer that just really went out this morning. So stick around for the end of the interview, and then we will stop playing the interview and then go to Q&A. All right, let's get started.
So what are we hacking into today, Alissa?
APIs. Anything APIs, whether it's connected medical devices, connected cars, any kind of embedded system, everything talks with APIs. I don't know if I talked to you about this in our last interview, but the interesting thing is recently a report came out from Akamai that had actually quoted 82% of the CDN traffic on the internet now is API traffic. And so that means that more than half of the internet traffic today is no longer human to application traffic. It's app or device to application. So it's a really interesting statistic. And I think hackers are focusing their attention on APIs, knowing that that's where the data is. Because it's all about monetizing data today, right? Not defacing websites. So my focus, my vulnerability research is in APIs. At the moment, I'm working with an API security vendor called Critical Blue. That is, basically their solution allows you to compile your mobile app with their SDK, and it actually can interdict the traffic and determine whether the traffic going to the APIs is human traffic or if it's synthetic traffic generated by some sort of attack script or attack tool. So it can distinguish between human traffic and synthetic traffic. So what I'm doing is part of their research is I've downloaded 30 telemedicine and telehealth applications that allows me to reverse engineer them and look for hard-coded keys and tokens in the apps, and then actually go after the API endpoint. So we're working with several telehealth companies right now and hospitals that have offered to make their API endpoints available to me to hack. So as you know, we're in this post-COVID world at the moment where a lot of people can't go to their local physician, can't seek out their mental health professionals. So they do this all remotely with telemedicine apps now. They're a big thing. As a matter of fact, there is a company now that's gone public. They're publicly traded, that their infrastructure is telemedicine. So that's my focus at the moment, is hacking APIs on the telemedicine or telehealth world. And so,
well, for our audience who don't know what an API is, let's just describe what an API is and how it relates to the financial as well as the health industry.
sure. So an API basically takes an application, which is called an API provider, right? That's providing data and allows outside developers to develop an application to be able to communicate with it. It's like an interpreter or Rosetta Stone for the data. So a great analogy is, an electrical socket, right? Think of that as like an API. It doesn't matter what you plug into the electrical socket, whether it's to charge your iPhone or plug in your television. The API is that electrical socket. It really doesn't care what's pulling that electricity. It doesn't care what's pulling that data. It sends the commands. It interprets the commands that the backend needs to be able to understand to pull that data out. And these API providers will actually publish a documentation for how to write API requests for their backend. So developers can create mobile apps to be able to communicate with it. That's one type of API, right? So there's other types of APIs that are not open. And so my vulnerability research has been targeting these API endpoints that are not open for you to write apps for. These are telehealth, telemedicine apps that are communicating with API backends. We're in this new API economy where data really is being provided by API endpoints, by APIs. You have that letter that got leaked from Jeff Bezos at Amazon that said, basically everyone is to create their applications at Amazon behind APIs. And if you don't do this, if you don't build your apps around APIs, find a new job. Everything is moving to APIs. And one of the world's largest cloud service providers is even requiring their employees to build them around APIs. So APIs, like I said in the Akamai report, is 82% of today's internet traffic.
Well, how do you find that internet traffic? I mean, I would think to actually, well, you talked about APIs that are open and APIs that are not. I'm assuming they both run on the internet, obviously.
Yeah, so there's actually websites that offer a big catalog of APIs that are out there that are available for you to program for, create apps for, with information on those APIs. So there are actual databases that are cataloging and discovering these APIs and making them available to the internet for developers to be able to research.
Well, what I was getting at is how would you find ones that are not publicly available, the ones that you mentioned?
So what I do, that's a good question. So what I've done is I've downloaded these apps and I've set up, and there's an article that I've published on this as well as a video that shows you how to connect your mobile phone to your computer and actually interdict that mobile app traffic to be able to understand, first of all, what the API URLs are that the mobile app is using, what the API requests look like. All of that can be gleaned through this sort of proxy. And also, in addition to that, in one of the tools that I've used is an SSL proxy tool that allows me to decrypt the SSL traffic so I can look at those API requests. So a lot of these apps use SSL. A lot of them, believe it or not, don't use SSL pinning, but a lot of them do use SSL. And this SSL MIDM tool, this proxy tool, actually will decrypt the SSL traffic, allowing me to actually look at the URIs. So I can then take those API requests that those mobile apps are communicating with and then manually recreate them in Postman, which is an API client that I use, and then target the APIs, send requests that the developers didn't expect to receive, attempt to really just exploit the API to be able to extract that data without an account, without valid user credentials. So in my exercises, a lot of the vulnerabilities that I find in API endpoints are what are called BOLA vulnerabilities, or broken object level authorization, where I'm requesting data from the API endpoint that I'm not authorized to be able to see. In some cases, not even authenticated. So a lot of the research that I've performed so far has been really shocking that these telemedicine apps are hard coding API tokens, API keys in their apps. A lot of them not being able to distinguish between synthetic traffic that's being generated from a tool and actual human traffic where someone is legitimately using their telemedicine app or telehealth app and clicking on their smartphone glass or whatever they're doing. A lot of these telemedicine apps don't have a solution to be able to look at that traffic, inspect it, and be able to determine whether it's real or synthetic.
It's interesting that so far we've gotten to the point where you're intercepting it. You're connecting your phone to the computer and you're intercepting some of these, and you're sending out requests on behalf of what have you to get into something, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's, for me, one of the things that I've really been a big proponent of is the argument that you don't have to be a programmer in order to be a hacker, right? You don't need to know how to write code in order to be a very effective penetration tester. I can't write a single line of code, but I also discovered the first vulnerability on hacking VPNs and spoke about it at Black Hat briefings in 2000. And today, a lot of that comes into practice where, to me, hacking is really just trying to understand how an app works, trying to understand how the target works, and sending a stimulus to the target, either whether it's a device or an application that the developer didn't expect to receive, and then trying to exploit that for gain. So, okay, if it's trying to extrapolate data or extract data out of the backend database, then what are the series of requests that the backend is expecting to receive in order for me to do that? A lot of these apps, like I mentioned, have hard-coded keys and tokens in them. Some have hard-coded credentials in them. So, a lot of it really isn't needing to know how to write code. It's just grabbing an API client like Postman and then recreating these requests that the apps are sending, but without sending those credentials, or pasting the keys that I found in the apps, and then sending those with my client and grabbing that data with Postman.
Well, switching gears, does the industry understand all of this? I mean, if they're hard coding critical information into these apps, it's pretty easy for somebody like you to grab them. I mean,
right. Right. Yeah. If you remember in 2019, I really made a name for myself, if you will, and this research is really what put me on the map. Was when I downloaded the 30 financial services mobile apps, did the same thing, and found all these hard-coded keys and tokens and credentials in them. And now, a year later, I'm finding them the same systemic problem in telehealth and telemedicine apps, where PHI, protecting healthcare information, patient healthcare information is prevalent. And this is very sensitive data. Like these are video calls that patients are having with their healthcare providers. These are text messages that they're sending back and forth with their healthcare providers. So this is very sensitive data, and in my opinion, is not the security hygiene isn't where it needs to be with apps like this. And it's a new area that we're exploring. This is a move in a completely different direction in healthcare, and we're repeating the same problems, the same mistakes that we've experienced over the last 20 years of hard coding credentials, in these apps that are easily accessible by reverse engineering them with tools like MobSF. So, it is, the findings are scary. I'm still in the middle of the research. So it's an area that I love exploring, is API security. I've been given a book contract from Wiley to be able to write a new book on hacking APIs. So this is an area that I understand very well. Unfortunately, I'm seeing the same vulnerabilities, the same mistakes, and very poor coding where these apps are not hardened. They're certainly not using solutions like Critical Blue or Proof to harden these apps. So these apps are going out there, and there's a lot of security issues with them. And I'm going to be publishing my findings in this white paper, in this report, as well as putting together a video talking about the finding.
How does the banking industry and the telehealth compare in terms of their vulnerabilities? Which is, has the banking industry, have they turned around based on your previous work and what have you, or is it still the same? Or
and still, and looking at those same apps again that I looked at last year, a lot of them are still hard coding keys and tokens. There's still hard coded credentials in them. It seems like we're not really making much progress in this area. I spoke to some of the developers with some of the financial services and fintech companies, and the response was, hey, I need to store these keys on the client. Where am I supposed to store them if I don't store them in the source code? That's a serious problem if a developer is asking something like that. So, the answer to your question is no, things don't seem to be getting better on the financial services and fintech side. The industry is very similar to telemedicine, and the fact that they all use APIs as their plumbing. Their mobile apps and their web apps communicate with APIs on their backend, just like these telemedicine apps do. You look at the protocols, the API standard, like the Financial Data Exchange, or FDX. That's an API. All of these financial services and fintech companies use APIs as their plumbing.
When you speak to the programmers, and obviously they have to hard code it into the source code. Where is the do they want to change it, and it's because of pressure that you have to have it, and customer service, you have to have it this way, or what is the issue that's stopping them from changing this? Obviously, it's a very important issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said before, a lot of these developers I've reached out to, I spoke at conferences in Asia, in Europe last year, across the US, talking about this problem. And I did run into some mobile app developers in companies that have been retained by these financial services companies to write these mobile apps. Because if you think about it, these banks they don't have buildings and floors of developers writing their mobile apps. They typically outsource it, right? So these financial services companies are outsourcing their mobile app development. I've spoken to these developers. They did say, hey, look, if I can't hard code these keys into the mobile app, where am I supposed to put them? They need to be on the client. There's multiple solutions for this. You can obfuscate the code. You can implement a solution like Critical Blue. Their product is called Approve. What it does is you actually compile the app with their SDK, and it implements these security controls to be able to determine, hey, look, is this traffic going to the API endpoint synthetic or real human traffic? You need to do security in multiple layers. It's not just a silver bullet. It's multiple things you need to do to be able to protect these API endpoints. You ask a great question, and the developers ask the same thing. Where do we put it if it's supposed to go on the endpoint? And yeah, you have to put those on the endpoint, but there's different controls you can implement in order to protect them. You have other technologies as well, like OAuth 2, but automatically generated tokens that have a lifetime and live only a short period of time, that sort of thing.
How fast is this adoption? I mean, is there movement forward in the banking as well as the health industry to do this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a new area, a new domain for security engineers. I think, yes, hackers are beginning to understand APIs more and more. they're focusing their targeting, adversaries are focusing their targeting around this. You see these in the API breaches that have occurred over the last few years. And there, we definitely have, you know, we do have instances we can refer to, like T-Mobile and some of these other companies have had API breaches. So we are having examples of API breaches where we can do the forensics, we can understand how they're breaching them and build controls around it. Security engineers are developing their area of expertise around APIs. The thing is that a lot of companies are making the mistake of trying to protect APIs like they would protect a web server, right? Put a web application firewall in front of it, we're done. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way because a lot of the vulnerabilities, a lot of the ways these APIs are attacked isn't through traditional SQL injection, like you would a regular web app, a legacy web application. You have things like I said, BOLA, broken object level authorization. You may be able to authenticate with the API, but just because I can authenticate it, does that necessarily mean I should be authorized to see everything in the database? Does that mean I'm authorized to be able to do these things just because I can authenticate or just because I have a key, right? So I think there's different ways we need to think about it from a blue team perspective where we're protecting these APIs. We need to think about the entire, look at more holistically and think about the whole world, the entire area of the attack surface that could potentially be used to breach these APIs.
So where does the end user stand at this point? I mean, how, the customers for these banks, the people who are using these apps, is there anything that they can do to stop you from getting to their data?
Definitely hack your own APIs. You know, these financial institutions, you know, and I was actually having this conversation with a few folks over at another, what are called challenger banks, these new internet banks with no infrastructure, with no branches, right? These new internet-based banking institutions. And this conversation led down the path of, you know, what is the modern bank today? You know, the modern bank today is very much a fintech company. You know, banks today aren't, you know, like, you know, It's a Wonderful Life, putting the dollar in the safe. You know, it's moving around ones and zeros. It's mobile apps, it's APIs. They're fintech companies, and they need to adapt to this new world where, especially when you have an internet bank, it's not going to be the robber with the mask on who walks into their bank branch with guns and robs them. It's you know, some you know, hacker in Eastern Europe or some 14-year-old picking those in his bedroom or her bedroom and hacking that bank and moving ones and zeros around, right? You know, you saw that in my API breach video on my YouTube channel where I hacked that big European bank through their API and was able to change any customer's ATM debit PIN code and move money around without authentication. So, you know, this is a real problem, and banks and financial institutions need to understand how big of an attack surface their APIs pose. A lot of, you know, the typical bank now runs over 600 APIs, right? A lot of the financial institutions, a lot of the FinServ and FinTech companies don't even know how many APIs they have. They don't, you know, there's this new term being coined, shadow APIs, where they don't know when a developer is deploying a new API and mistakenly makes it accessible from the internet. You know, with these shadow APIs comes risks and problems like an attack surface that you didn't know existed. A lot of CISOs at FinServ and FinTech companies don't even know which APIs are facing the internet, right? You've seen CISOs come out in breaches and say, hey, look, you know, that was supposed to be decommissioned, or that was a dev environment, or that was a dev machine. It doesn't absolve you of the mistake that was made. You know, you had a shadow IT problem, or you had a shadow API problem where there was something facing the internet that you didn't know about. You know, so it's a real problem, and when you're talking about money, it becomes a very expensive problem.
Well, isn't this, you know, you keep hearing the phrase security by design, right? And you keep hearing that people, you know, we're doing that, you know, our product is security by design. Where are we on that? I mean, have we gotten to a point where we're they can truly say that it's security by design, or we still have a long way to go?
You know, as a content creator, content marketer, it might be weird hearing me say something like this, but I think the concept or idea of secure by design is just marketing fluff. I really don't think we will ever be there, because if what can be made by humans can be broken by humans. If humans are making something, there's going to be holes, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be problems. Humans by design are flawed creatures. You know, we make mistakes. I don't believe that we will ever truly have a secure by design product. I think we can try and push security left as much as we can, meaning that instead of implementing security right, where it's in production and we then implement security, shift left security is implementing security while it's being developed. That's what I love about solutions like Critical Blue, where the SDK is compiled with the app. You know, it moves us more into this frame of mind, this idea that, hey, look, while the code is being written, while it's being developed, that's where we need to be thinking about hardening. That's where we need to be thinking about static and dynamic code analysis. That's where we need to be thinking about security, where not only are we hardening the code, but we're also compiling the app with a security solution like an SDK. So I think we're moving in that direction, but I don't think we will ever have a truly secure by design product.
When you say we're moving in that direction, how far have we moved in that direction? I'm looking at it from a end user point of view. You know, how comfortable can an end user feel that, oh yeah, this is in the works, it's coming?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I would think that maybe even if saying 25% of the apps I've looked at have moved in this direction, it's a very low number, I think. I never like to be kind of like the one where, you know, I'm running around saying the sky is falling. You know, it's bad, but we definitely need to be doing better. I would say, you know, out of all of the apps I looked at, if you remember, like the research from 2019, it was like, what was it, 26 out of the 30 apps, the code I was able to find, hard-coded keys and credentials. You know, it's a large number. You know, you're talking about 90% and above. You know, obviously the customers of companies like Critical Blue wouldn't be included in that. They're taking that extra step and compiling their app with these secure SDKs. I would like to see more companies, especially when you're talking about telemedicine, right? I don't want my personal healthcare information. I'm one of those people where, you know what, throw caution to the wind. I'm going to, you know, I know that these online banking and P2P payment apps have vulnerabilities and issues. I'm still going to do it, right? I'm a hacker. I have believe it or not, I have a pretty high risk tolerance. And I will bank online. I will do these things knowing that if anything happens, my bank will reimburse my account if anything happens. I don't feel that same way about telemedicine and telehealth. Like, you know, that's my healthcare information that I don't want out there for sale on the dark web. And it actually commands a much higher dollar amount than things like you find in FinServ and FinTech, where, you know, the cost of a credit card number and PIN or chip and PIN data costs a lot less on the dark market than PHI. Because if you think about it, PHI has everything. It's got your birthday, it's got your address, it's got your health information, it's got sometimes social security number. I mean, all this data is in PHI. And it's actually in my paper that I talk about this and how valuable PHI is worth on the dark web. It commands the highest price of all that data that I talked about.
Well, do you think the pandemic has influenced this, where before we didn't have that many telehealth apps and now we have a whole bunch of them and everybody's using them?
It's definitely it's definitely a new economy of mobile apps. It's definitely a new, you know, a multi-billion-dollar economy. There's, like I said, there's, I believe at this point, one company that's publicly traded in the telemedicine space, with definitely more companies to come. I was able to find more than the 20 apps I originally set out to download, there are a lot of telemedicine apps out there. You know, some of the apps weren't even developed in the United States, right? So, you know, there's definitely a burning economy of apps in this space. And it's frightening to me as a vulnerability researcher how insecure a lot of these apps are, right? And I can't go out there and download every app and then test every API endpoint without the company being involved in supporting it and, you know, it being a sanctioned pen test. Really, I've only been able to work with a handful of companies in doing this, who've allowed me who are offering to participate in this research. But I'm sure if I looked at every API endpoint that you know, for every app I've downloaded, the findings would be a lot worse.
Do we get to see a demonstration of a healthcare app API hack?
I might. We'll see. You know, I think I may actually throw some screenshots into this video and make those available. So yeah, we'll see. We'll make that a potential surprise.
I don't know if it's relevant, but you mentioned that some of these apps were made overseas or written overseas.
Yeah.
You know, how do the banks as well as the healthcare companies feel about malicious code that's already been inserted before it got to you?
Yeah, that's scary. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that an app, just because it's offshore, just because development is offshore, that it's less secure. I'm just saying that, you know, quite a few of these apps have been developed OCONUS outside the continental United States. You know, and yeah, unfortunately, you know, when you have a company that is transmitting, processing, and storing, you know, protected healthcare and patient healthcare information, with that comes, you know, certain liabilities and security concerns, because this is very sensitive data, right? You know, whether or not I have type 2 diabetes, or, you know, if somebody has HIV, you know, I mean, all of this is very sensitive data, which is why, you know, HIPAA was created to try and safeguard this information, HIPAA high tech and all these other things. And you know, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned based on what I'm seeing with these healthcare apps, whether or not these apps are HIPAA compliant, or, you know, how much of HIPAA needs to be updated to reflect this. Because when HIPAA was created, the idea of telemedicine and telehealth wasn't really around, right? These telehealth apps, they didn't really exist when HIPAA was written, right? 45 CFR, right? So, you know, what needs to be updated? What is being overlooked that hasn't been thought about? So what I'll do is I'll close out with this. You know, if the white paper and the video should be coming out soon, so definitely
Okay.
keep an eye out on it. Follow me on Twitter at Alissa Knight, or connect with me on LinkedIn. and definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. When I create new videos as a content creator, whether I'm hacking a telemedicine app or hacking a bank or any embedded system, it's uploaded to my YouTube channel. So definitely subscribe to me on YouTube at Alissa Knight, and the research around hacking telemedicine will be published then.
Okay, awesome. We did have some people, yay! We did have some people who joined late. So if you did join late, like I put in the chat, go ahead and hop over to my YouTube channel. The trailer was uploaded this morning. We will be releasing more trailers. Like I said in the interview, I am still in the middle of doing the research. We've worked with, there were several hospitals and healthcare companies who were gracious enough to participate in this exercise, in this research, and allow me to hack their APIs. So we do have some screenshots already, even though I'm in the middle of it. We have quite a lot of screenshots, more than could fit in the paper. So we will be actually releasing new trailers. So you know how Hollywood movies have multiple trailers? We're going to do the same thing. Not that I feel like I work for DreamWorks or something, but I'm going to be creating new trailers as I generate more screenshots from the research. So one of the things that I did not address in the interview with Seth, and I think it was one of the questions that was asked was, a lot of apps these days, the developers are implementing jailbreak or rooted device detection. And one of the things that I can tell you guys is when I do mobile app pen testing, I actually don't do it on a rooted device. So I'm actually running the mobile app and intercepting the traffic, like I talked about in the video, especially if they're using code obfuscation. How do you find out the API request if the code is obfuscated? Well, if you intercept that traffic and use something like Minim proxy to decrypt the SSL traffic, you can see those API requests. So something to think about is, again, there is no silver bullet to security. And just because you've implemented jailbreak detection into your app, that's not going to stop someone like me who may be targeting you. So with that, I think I need to hand it off to Seth or possibly Tony.
Well, you have a few questions. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so I think if we have a few questions, let's proceed with those.
I think from Pat LaRussa, how can we know whether our financial managers entities API is protected? They all say app traffic is safe, but is there any way the client can know? Should I just cash out and buy gold?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And so I think like last year I spoke at, was it 22 conferences across Asia and Europe and the US, and this was a common question was, what can consumers do? What can we as Jane Doe on Main Street do? I mean, unless you're willing to hook your phone up to your computer and start up Minim proxy and intercept the traffic with Wireshark and look at the typical consumer isn't going to do that. So a lot of the developers, a lot of the providers, yes, they will say our mobile app is secure. When they say it's secure, meaning that they've done the typical things like implement jailbreak protection or detection, using SSL encryption. But believe it or not, there's a lot of things like SSL pinning which are not implemented because, and for those of you who are developers in the audience know what I'm about to say, it's because the idea of trying to manage certificates with SSL certificate pinning is a nightmare, and it can be a nightmare, especially if a certificate expires. So it's very rare where I even see certificate pinning implemented. As a consumer, I can tell you if you're a hacker what you should do, obviously, but at that point you already know. As a consumer, I really don't know what to tell you. You have to have a certain amount of acceptable risk. Believe it or not, even as a hacker, my acceptable risk, my risk tolerance is very high. Like, if I know that if my financial, my account information, and I'm a day trader, I do a lot in the stock market. I run a venture capital fund. I do a lot of stuff in finance and I use these apps. I even use apps that I've found vulnerabilities in. You know, and I even used services that I found vulnerabilities in their APIs. But I know that if any of the transactions in my account are fraudulent, I can call up my financial institution and they will quickly reimburse me. You just have to have, what's the acceptable amount of risk? Now, I have a lot of recommendations for developers, of course. I have a lot of recommendations for the companies themselves. But as a consumer, you just got to ask yourself, what's your risk tolerance? You know, because I mean, you guys need to remember there is no such thing as an unhackable app. You can't look at, like, you can't take 3 service providers, 3 financial services companies or fintech companies and say, okay, which one talks about their cybersecurity the most? Which was, because there's no such thing as an unhackable app. You know, like Google's been hacked, Facebook's been hacked. All these companies with billions of dollars in market cap and massive cybersecurity budgets that trumps your at-home cybersecurity budget are getting hacked. So what hope do you have? You know, you can't walk into Best Buy and say, yes, Best Buy, I would like an API security solution. They're going to look at you and not know what the hell you're talking about. So the only thing that you can do is, you know, make your decisions based on the features or functionality you're looking for, and you know, and know that it's not if they're going to get compromised, but when, and how does that organization handle that breach? How do they handle that breach? That's today. You know, how companies aren't getting black eyes anymore for being breached. You notice that? Remember when it was like really taboo and like, oh, the CISO was fired and whomever, like, it's not a big deal anymore. It's like, oh yeah, we got breached. All right, so what are you going to do about it? Those are the things that you need to be thinking about.
Okay, we have a question from Ziggy. What is your opinion regarding reverse proxy service, which is facing internet and handling security in one place? API is on the secured network, then protected by, for example, machine certificate only, versus every API has its own security implemented by itself. Which one would be better?
Oh, Ziggy, there are a lot of questions in there. Let me try and break that apart.
Ziggy is a specialist.
Okay, Ziggy. So
I like these questions.
There's a lot there.
I know.
Questions are good. It means that people are paying attention. So, okay. Proxy services like Hide My Ass and these other VPN services, I stay absolutely clear of them. Why? First of all, it's really only protecting your transport traffic, meaning that you're encrypted from your machine to the VPN endpoint wherever their server is. Now, have you guys paid attention to where those actual servers are? A lot of them are in Eastern Europe, right? A lot of them are in Russia. A lot of them are in Ukraine. You don't really know where your data is going. You may feel protected because your traffic's encrypted over a VPN, but what happens when the data arrives at where it's going, right? It's only end to end, right? The other thing is you don't know who's in control of those VPNs. You don't know who's in control of those certificates. If you guys are going to use those VPN services and even pay for a premium VPN account, be really careful of who you sign up with and where those servers are. A lot of them, you're basically going up to a stranger on the street and you're saying, hi, would you please take all of my traffic destined for the internet and secure it for me? And this is a complete stranger and you don't know who they are. That's effectively what you're doing. I don't use them. There may be some pluses to using them. I don't see them. You're also talking to someone who published the first vulnerability on hacking VPNs. So I don't think anything is fully safe. And then on top of it, to give my internet traffic to someone I don't know, running servers in Eastern Europe, I wouldn't do it. The other part of that question, as far as certificate, you know, a lot of these apps are hard coding their private certificates on the device and also doing it unencrypted. I've done a lot of private keys on these devices and that are in clear text. You know, PKI is only as good as the security of the certificates, right? That's another thing that I've seen a lot of developers make huge fails on is where they're storing their private keys. And a lot of them, in addition to hard coding API secrets and credentials like username and passwords, they're also hard coding private certificates. So be careful with PKI. Every API has its own secure implement by itself. Which one would be? I mean, you know, it's hard to say, oh, this one's better than the other. You guys need to look at security like an onion. Look at it in layers, right? So, you know, you have your solutions like Approve that where you compile your app with their SDK. You have other solutions that will passively or actively interdict the API traffic and inspect it. You have some solutions where it'll proxy the API traffic before it's passed on to the API. I've always been a big believer in the whole castle moat, you know, mentality where, you know, you're just trying to implement your security controls and layers, and on top of it, hack your own APIs, hack your own apps. I can't tell you how many organizations I've been talking to where they're having their internal developers or their internal security people pen test their apps. Bad idea. They're already drunk on their own Kool-Aid. Why are you going to have the people that have written the code? No offense to the developers, because like I said, I couldn't write a single line of code if my life depended on it. But why are you having those same people who write that code test the app, hack the app, bring in someone from the outside, have them hack it, test not only just the mobile app, but also the API endpoint. That's, you know, something to think about.
Hey, Alissa, I have a question, kind of switching gears. You know, we talked about telemedicine, we talked about the financial companies with regard to APIs. What do you think is the next vertical that's going to be prominent besides these two?
What's the next vertical I may go after? Target?
Well, I was trying to be diplomatic.
Who's your next victim, Alissa?
I didn't want to come out and say that, but
you know, here's the thing: we're in this app economy now, right? How many teenage millionaires? Sorry, getting a prank call. How many millionaires have been created out there because they wrote an app? We're in this new app economy where, you know, even me, when I sign up for a new service or SaaS service, my first thing to look for is if they have a mobile app. The number of laptop sales are going down while the number of mobile phone sales are going up. Even tablets are becoming too big for people to want to lug around, and they're just, their first inclination is to pull out their phone and do it on their phone. SaaS services are being attacked because, you know, flogged because they don't have a mobile app or a mobile version of their site. The answer to your question is anyone. You know, right now it's telemedicine because, sorry, I need to let someone in. In 2020, for me, it's telemedicine because in this post-COVID economy, I was starting to see more and more people visiting their healthcare providers and they're talking to their doctors on mobile apps. So I was like, I wonder if anyone's looked at these yet. You know, that's what kind of tickles my pickle or floats my boat. For me, the next thing is, I don't know, wherever the most victims are going to be congregating, right? So for me, last year it was financial services apps. This year it's telehealth. Maybe next year it'll be stock brokerages. I don't know. I guess it's wherever there's the greatest pool of potential victims for me.
okay.
Any other questions? Not at all. Awesome. Well, I'm good on this side unless anyone has any other questions. Again, you can follow me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I can tell you that if you know, a common question is, hey, where do you publish your research first? It's actually YouTube. So if you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, right now I haven't been publishing much content because I'm in the middle of move. But I do a live stream every week and upload new videos every week to YouTube. So definitely sub there and you'll see my latest research published there. So that's it.
Oh, great.
I'll pass it off to
Thank
you.
you very much, Alissa. This was, yeah, that was a great presentation, and thank you for your insight into the hacking business and how to avoid it. Thank you, Seth, for your continued support of the chamber and leading the effort here. Also want to thank our ambassador, Mr. Gaston Strong in Washington, D.C. for participating in the event here. And thanks to Janet and Tony again. Thank you, Tony. That was great. And on to the next one. And thanks all for joining both in the US and in Luxembourg. I had seen some Luxembourg participants, so that's great. And we'll talk soon. On to the next event.
Great questions,
And,
everyone. Thanks. Thanks,
Thank
Angela,
you,
Kyle,
Melissa.
Ziggy.
Seth,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
okay, have a great
Good
day.
everyone. Goodbye.